right. Hi, everyone. I'm Kat. I'm an engineering manager, and I'm here to talk to you about retaining your people after the tech boom. So we heard a little bit about this today, and I don't want to trigger anyone with all of these horrifying headlines, but I do want to put us into the context of the tech industry over the past couple of years. So we're seeing three big themes in these headlines. We saw a peak of 9% inflation in June of 2022. This caused interest rates to rise, and then tech industries had to cut costs and pivot to focusing on profitability rather than growth, which then led us to 240,000 tech jobs being cut in 2023. This, coupled with COVID, led to a shift in our working environment, and we're now seeing that our workplace happiness is down 8% since 2019. And so all of these together make for some bad vibes. So what does that mean for retention? It means that companies are pivoting away from company-wide retention methods. So in order to cut operating expenses, companies can't guarantee the things that they used to. Things like consistent and predictable promotions, yearly salary increases, offsites to crazy places, weekly company happy hours, free breakfast, lunch, and dinner, on-site acupuncture and massages, and that's the biggest one we have to say bye to, sadly. So because less money is going into retention from the top level, we need to get more creative with how we retain our people by introducing personalized retention methods. So using our skills as line and middle managers to keep our people. But in order to figure out how to keep our people, we need to figure out what drives them away. So this is a list taken from a 2021 survey as the top reasons that people leave. You'll see that line and middle management don't necessarily have control over most of these reasons. So I want to focus on the reasons that we can control. There's no opportunities for advancement, feeling disrespected at work, lack of flexibility, and too few and too many hours. So the first one I want to address is for anyone feeling disrespected, I have a method called being a human person. And you may think this is funny or obvious or very easy, but I can tell you from personal experience, I had a lot to learn in this area. So my company sends out a survey to employees twice a year, and in 2023, these were my scores for the following prompts. So I saw people weren't actually super comfortable coming to me to talk about their mental health. And I made a lot of changes to how I showed up to work after this result. I used to not be really upfront about my age because I'm younger than most of my reports and I didn't want to appear really inexperienced just because they were 10 years my senior. But after this result, I started to be more open and vulnerable, not just about my age, but opening up about things that I'm bad at, things that I'm working on, and even personal struggles. And shocker, they opened up right back. So I was hopeful that this score would increase, and to my surprise, not only was this score at 100%, but my recommendation score now also soared to 100% as well, despite most of my other scores not even getting close to 100. So what I kind of learned from this is that people want to be managed by other human people, especially in these times, not just people that can deliver results. And being considered a good manager does actually have a huge impact on whether they stick around. So not only do 85% of people believe that a good manager is important for their workplace happiness, but 38% of people have actually stayed longer at a company solely because of that good manager, including me. The next reason I want to focus on that people tend to leave is burnout. I'll focus specifically on burnout, not too many or too few, although I believe this addresses it as well. The main way I want to approach this is to prioritize and then reprioritize and then reprioritize again, and one more for fun. As an engineering manager, or any leader in tech really, I believe that one of your main jobs is to say no. And there are a plethora of ways to do this, but what you really don't want to do when faced with a new ask is to offer to squeeze it in. A beginner response would say, absolutely not, but I don't think that would warrant the best reaction. So an intermediate response might be to ask them to come back later. We'll put it at the back of our roadmap, or Ask me again in 6 months. But I think the best response is to ask and understand, how does this new opportunity compare with everything else on our existing roadmap? So if this is so important, what should we cut on this roadmap in order to accommodate this new important thing? Which leads me into how we should look at priorities. So I recently led 2 teams that worked in similar areas and each had their own list of priorities. But in looking at the 2 roadmaps, I saw that very soon Team 2 would be working on a project that was way less important than everything on Team 1's roadmap. And so my PMs and I got together and we ranked the priorities, and I ended up merging these 2 very small teams into one larger team. And this way people were always working on the most important piece of work, and selfishly, I had way fewer meetings. So whether you reorg or not, it's always good to look at your priorities at a higher level and make sure that the most important work is always being tackled. And you might be asking, how often should one really reprioritize? And I'm not necessarily suggesting you do this every morning with your coffee, but if you feel like it, go nuts. I do suggest you do it at least quarterly or on whatever regular period that your company does planning, and anytime something changes in your team. So whether it's someone leaving, someone joining, maybe it's a reorg in teams and organizations around you, or maybe it's just a new big request that comes in. You can also do this in the very rare free time that I'm sure all of us have, if you want to look at how to be more efficient or improve things. So it's rarely a bad thing to be up to date on what's most important. And the last reason that people leave that I want to talk about is a lack of flexibility and advancement. So while we may not get to promote people at the same rate that we used to, I think finding some core motivators can help people grow in ways that keep them motivated without necessarily having to give them a title bump. So here are some secondary motivators. They're slightly altered from Murray's system of needs for a more corporate context, and I actually stole this from a Spotify workshop that I went to. These come after primary needs like food and shelter. So here we have affiliation, security, autonomy, achievement, development, and recognition. And everyone will have their own profile for what motivates them to come to work every day, and what they do at work should really reflect the things that motivate them. For example, I am highly motivated by achievement and affiliation. Shout out Type 3 Enneagram people. My to-do list often has an item on it that says, make a to-do list, because I get such a rush of checking that thing off. I love moving Jira tickets to done. I think there should be like confetti every time you do it. And I'm a level 1000 yapper. I'm great on projects with lots of dependent teams where we have to build relationships. And I like projects with lots of milestones or like really short projects. And I'm not good at working alone or learning just for the sake of learning. I also have some personal habits, like keeping that incredibly long to-do list, and social one-on-ones that keep me motivated. This fake person that I made up that is in no way one of my reports, I did change their name, they have a very different motivation profile than me. So this person likes working alone, learning new things, and they just had a baby, so he's increasingly security motivated. He loves projects without many dependencies and taking on brand new skills. He does not like projects that might get canceled. I guess none of us really do, but he specifically doesn't like them. And he doesn't care about moving tickets across a Jira board. So he really benefits from workshops or side tasks to learn new things, and really thrives on projects that are going to be really long-term. So I've, in the past, had a hard time managing him because he's really hard for me to relate to. His motivation profile is very different than mine. But in taking the time to map out what motivates him, it's really helped. And I think understanding your report's motivation styles will also help you learn and work with them to actually allow them to job craft a little bit. And they can figure out how they want to grow in new ways without necessarily working in an industry that used to be, or without working in an industry as glamorous as it used to be. Okay, that's all of my lecturing. I will now leave you with some action items, as we always do in meetings. So I want you to do 3 things when you get back to work that I really believe will help your team stay happy and healthy. So 1, start one new vulnerable practice on your team. So maybe it's Failure Fridays, or maybe it's just asking 2 personal questions when you start your one-on-ones. 2, say no to one thing. Maybe it's an entire initiative, and if you pull that off, call me, because I would love to learn how you did it. But maybe it's just cutting a small feature off your MVP. And 3, figure out what your motivation profile is and share the 6 secondary motivators with your teams and work with them to understand what keeps them motivated. Okay, that's all I've got. If you have any questions or thoughts, I'll be at the networking event right after this, and I'm affiliation motivated, so I would love to chat. Thank you.